finally broke my 1.5-year weight stall with a carnivore diet. Hey, what's shaking bacon? My name's Bruno Panucci. I hope you're doing well. So I've been doing this carnivore diet very strict for well over 2.5 years, on and off for a few years before that. And I was doing zero carb on and off for a few years before that. Since I've been strict carnivore, I've been consistently losing weight. I find this a very easy way of eating. It's a very intuitive way of eating. When you're hungry, you eat meat, make sure you get enough fat, drink water, and have salt, and repeat. Simple as that. Eat when you're hungry. So life is simple, life is easy. But for most carnivores, that works great. But for some carnivores, we can eventually hit a weight stall. So you have to identify what the problem is. And earlier this year, I finally identified what the problem is. So halfway through this 1.5 years, I found out I still had really high fasting insulin. That doesn't make any sense when you're on a carnivore diet because it's a zero carb diet. And to have high fasting insulin after that long of a strict carnivore diet without a lick, taste, or bite of anything off a carnivore diet, it's kind of peculiar. But now the important part was I could identify what the problem was. So along with that, I tried to troubleshoot that. And one of the ways I found out I could troubleshoot that was a high-fat carnivore diet. Now, I had already done a high-fat carnivore diet for 4 months, and it only pushed me past it about 10 pounds. I eventually switched to this higher fat carnivore diet, a 90-10 ratio of fat to protein. And I was honestly eating too much in the beginning. And in a short amount of time, I put on a lot of weight, probably around 50 pounds. When I put on this weight, I was really surprised. The weight didn't bother me because I knew I would start losing weight with this carnivore diet because that's what happens when you do a carnivore diet. But what I didn't like with it was my pulse went up, my heart rate went up, and also I was a little more out of breath when I was going for walks. I wasn't out of breath, but my brisk walk was a little slower and I was breathing heavier through it. And I was like, okay, this isn't cool. So eventually, naturally, I started eating less and less on that high fat version of carnivore. I started with 6 small meals a day, went down to 5 small meals a day, then went down to 4 small meals a day. And I was getting stuffed by the end of each day. Whenever I tried to have a 5th meal, I was like, oh, I can't do that. So 4 small meals a day worked well. And then eventually when I went back to a regular carnivore diet, I started getting results and I lost that weight rather quickly. So the reason why I stuck that through with a high fat version of carnivore is I have hypothyroidism, and I put on a lot of weight with hypothyroidism, and it took a long time before the medications kicked in. And eventually I was on one of the strongest doses. And that's changed, and I'll get more into that later on in the video. The purpose of that high-fat version of carnivore was to help my thyroid gland heal and to help my adrenal gland heal. Turned out, it seemed to make a dramatic difference. My allergies went away by about 90%. I've had those allergies for 30 years. So when I went back to regular carnivore, I started getting these results, and I was getting the results relatively quick, I guess. Everyone always wishes the weight loss would come ridiculously quick, but it's been about 4 months. And in that 4 months, I lost that 50 pounds. And this is what I did on my regular version of carnivore. I was eating intuitively. So that meant I had days with higher fat, days with less fat. I had days where I would just eat a roasted chicken and I would have it at lunch, or ideally around 11 o'clock. And then I wasn't really hungry the rest of the day. Sometimes I was, and then I ate something, but most of the time I was good. It all depended on my activity level. I started having days where I was doing some water fasting or dry fasting. It was definitely helping to reset my body and keep my body guessing. And I got really good results with that. The interesting thing about any of these water fasts or dry fasts that I was doing was when I was finished, within days to a week, I would end up back at my original starting point with my weight. Now, I've always been concerned on this channel since my first video that I want to maintain my lean mass as I lose weight. Ideally, try and build some. And I've come to realize that there's a good possibility that even doing a simple weight training routine and taking it easy during that weight training routine, but pushing myself when I'm actually pushing the weight, is just too much for my adrenal gland. And that is causing enough of a cortisol bump that I think it was preventing me from losing weight. So I haven't been weight training in the last little while, but I can always go back to weight training. As long as I'm doing something to try and maintain my muscle mass, that's what counts. And I'm going to be doing a bod pod exam soon enough. It's about a 40-minute drive out of town to get that done in a slightly larger city. And I'm looking forward to doing that. That's going to be within the next week or two, hopefully. And then I'll post those results online to talk about my lean mass, my body fat percentage. And I'm expecting nothing wondrous, but the important thing is the scale's moving And hopefully I'll be maintaining my lean mass, at least from where I was the last time I had that test done. So with those roasted chickens in my diet, I've also been getting a little more seafood. Seafood's typically leaner. So basically a lot of what I've been doing in this window of time is a form of metabolic confusion. And that's what happens when you're eating intuitively on carnivore. But when it's months, that's a different story. Some things I've added to my day-to-day supplements in the last couple months has been potassium chloride. And that's good because our body needs potassium to help get some of that water retention out of our body that the salt helps us retain. And I've been taking Lugol's iodine for basic metabolic support. So here's where I've been doing something in the last little while that should cause weight gain. And this is what I've done. It's really out there. I've cut my thyroid medication by about 40%. Now, anyone out there who has a thyroid problem knows that when you cut your thyroid medication by 40% or even 10%, it can throw your body's system off and it doesn't know what to do and it doesn't know how to handle it. And you typically put on weight if you have hypothyroidism, which I have. So the reason why I started doing this was I consulted a naturopathic doctor and then I consulted my family doctor, and my thyroid stimulating hormone was virtually non-existent. The number was so low, it was like 0.01 something. It was extremely low. And that was my body's way of saying there's no need to produce thyroid hormone because we're managed very well. The body's topped off. Well, the body was topped off because of the medication. So my body got lazier and lazier when it came time to produce that hormone. So I talked to both of those doctors and I said, hey, what do you think if I cut back on my thyroid medication to see if it starts kicking my body into making more hormone naturally? So I've been trying it, and even though I've cut my thyroid medication by 40%, I'm still getting weight loss. That's crazy. I've lost 50 pounds in the last few months alone just from doing all those things on a carnivore diet. But more importantly, even though I've sabotaged my metabolism by cutting back on the thyroid medication that was keeping my metabolism topped and working ideally, functionally. Every time I got my thyroid tested, the numbers are in a perfect range. So I've kind of given my body an excuse to wake up, and it seems to be working. Now, the real goal for me is to see how long it takes before I break my next plateau, how long this weight loss will last for. I might just keep running with it. I might plateau in the next 10 pounds. But I know what I can do now to try and troubleshoot my weight stalls and weight loss if they last too long. I would do that high-fat version of carnivore again tomorrow, risking putting on weight, because in the big picture, I know it's going to come off. Too many people get scared when it comes to doing a high-fat version of carnivore because they're worried about putting weight on and they don't want to go backwards. But it was one of those situations where I had to go backwards to move forwards. And clearly it had a dramatic impact on my diet and my lifestyle. My point is, don't get discouraged by weight stalls. Keep on moving forward. I hope you take care. Thanks a lot. If you can, hit that bell notification and subscribe button. Thanks a lot. Take care.